What I'm going to try and do is to pull this. I've softened up the joint down here, and it needs pulling back a bit to make a nice line of the rim here. And I'm going to try lifting it, and I have to lift it out a little bit because this piece of pot has to fit in here. And it won't go in unless this is lifted off. So I'm hoping I can stretch the adhesive which is in here, just stretch it a little and then pop it back. At the same time, this piece of pot here is just held on with this clip. So I've just unclipped it, and I will take that out while I'm putting this piece of pot into here. So what I was trying to do was tilt this large piece of pot in the middle back and slip the other piece of the pot in. That didn't work out very well. It didn't work out at all, in fact, because it still wouldn't slip in. So what I've had to do is come up with a new strategy. So what I had to redo was this piece of pot here was the piece that I was trying to slide in from the side underneath this piece. It just wouldn't work. It wouldn't go in. There was sand in the old joints and all that sort of thing. So I was trying to remove this and lift it up, and in the end I've just had to move this whole piece of pot off completely. What I did was soften up the adhesive down this joint with pads of cotton wool soaked in acetone in the fume hood so that I could lift this piece off and realign it. At the same time as this was off, it seemed an opportune moment to stick in this piece of pot here with this V-shaped piece that was causing all the trouble last time. So what we have now is I've glued this whole piece back in, and it lines up and the joints are nice and smooth. So what I had actually was a situation like this that I was trying to get this piece of pot back into, and that didn't work because in realigning this piece was out of alignment. So what I've had to do now is take this piece of pot off as well, softening up the glue joint with acetone again, and removing that and then taking the old adhesive off. And it now allows me the opportunity to sit this piece back in here. The joints are very bad here. There's a huge gap here, and there are gaps all down. You can see the gaps all down here. It really only touches in one or two places, but it's definitely in the right place because the joint across here is quite nice. And I've other pieces that fit in here that line it up. So what I'm going to do is take my pot of polyvinyl acetate emulsion glue. So I'm going to take this piece off and try and remember where the glue line is. And just spread. The important thing is to put enough adhesive on. I put it on both sides of the joints because these joints are so bad that we need something to fill the space up and make sure we've got a really good bond. I don't worry about putting it right to the edges because it tends to drip over the surface of the pot, and we don't want that. So it's a good idea always to remember where the pot pieces fit so that you're not putting adhesive over pieces of pot that aren't going to stick anywhere. I will no doubt have to go over it when it's all clamped up and put more adhesive in with the needle. Just drop it in drop by drop down the side. So what I'm going to do now is to put this piece back in. So I'm now going to have to wiggle it around a piece, because the important thing is you can have it located pretty good one side and really mouse out the other. So I'm just going to ease it round a little now, and I think that's pretty good. So I can take my hand away. I'm going to clamp it up gently, very carefully, because the clamp can break pieces of pot out. And now I'm going to try and check these joints, and they're a little bit out. That is, this piece of pot is sticking out too far, so I'm going to try and ease it back. There we go. And I keep running my fingers over the joints to see if there are any ridges, and that seems pretty good. And then if any adhesive has just run out and there's just a little tiny piece there, I can just clean it off with a damp piece of scrap damp toweling. And there, I'll just let that set up now, and then we can replace this piece on the outside. I would do that just before the glue set. In about 30-40 minutes, about 40 minutes, I can take the clamp off. It will be pretty firm as long as it's not pushed around, but I can take the clamp off, put this piece back, and then make sure it aligns, these two pieces line up nicely as well. If I leave it too long, this will become rigid and I won't have any flexibility there at all. So I've got to leave it now for about 40 minutes and then come back to it and put these pieces back on. So what I've done, we stuck this piece on, I think, fairly successfully. It doesn't line up on the front and on the back, because this shard here has split. It's been buried in some ground that has become very wet and then dried out, and it kept doing that. And the sherd is delaminating. It's splitting along its side. So this piece is wide, this piece is wider than this piece, although it joins. So it's very difficult. You have to balance out a little bit one side and a little bit the other. Anyway, so to enable me to set it up exactly where I want it, I've cheated and I've put some little bits of epoxy putty in here. It's like plasticine, and then it sets in about 10 minutes. So that's all fairly rigid now. So I think it's going to balance about like that. I hope. This joint is very worn, so I may have to clamp it in the end. But first of all, I'll put some adhesive on it. I've put my thumb on the part of the pot which ends down here, so that I know where to start putting the adhesive on. It's very easy to forget where you are and spread glue out everywhere. I think that's it. So what I'm going to do now is to sit, hopefully, and there we go. And then I'm going to have to put a clamp down. And hold those two pieces together. I really don't like using these very strong clamps, because there's a danger that they're going to crack the pot where they're fitting it all together. This gives us quite a good rim segment here, so that we can measure this against some circles and see exactly what shape the rim of the pot was, and the piece I'm going to put on the bottom next will give us the shape of the bottom, and we can start developing an idea of what shape the entire pot was.